Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I am doing something completely different over here today, something that I've never done before. So, let me tell you what I'm doing. If you've watched this channel for a while, you've heard me talk about the fact that on Monday evenings, I do like a Zoom meeting. It's not a sanctioned meeting. It's just a group of 5 of us that get together and we read recovery literature. And we each read a little bit, probably like 10 minutes. And then we go back and we each share how we relate to the reading. So the first two books that we read were what is called sanctioned literature. And that means it's 12-step approved literature. They're books that are sold within 12-step programs, and they are books that we talk about in 12-step programs, and anything else is called outside literature, all right? That doesn't mean that you can't read it. It doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that those are not books that we discuss as being part of the program. So, for example, I talk a lot about Codependent No More. I've gained a lot from Codependent No More. Codependent No More is not a 12-step approved literature, okay? So, like, I wouldn't sit in a meeting and say, well, the other day when I was reading Codependent No More, because we only reference the literature that we would read in the 12-step program. Does that make sense? Now, the book that I'm going to be talking about today, a lot of people in recovery do talk about because it's just a recovery book, and most people know about that. And that book is Drop the Rock, Removing Character Defects, and it's specifically about steps 6 and 7. And even though so many people in recovery have read this book, and it's such a fantastic book, it is not what is considered approved literature, okay? So it doesn't mean anything really. It just means that you don't talk about those things, in those books in that program. So this is the book that we're reading right now. And while we were reading it last night, there was this part that, so it mixes between like personal stories of people. There's so many different stories of so many different people in here. But there's different stories, and then it kind of goes in and it kind of explains the reading. So when we read this part last night, I was like, I think this is such a valuable lesson, not just to step 6 and 7, which are about character defects, not just about in the removal of character defects in our lives or defects of character, and not just about recovery, and not just about 12-step programs, but I think it can be applicable to anybody. And so I wanted to read this, just a small part on here from last night. Well, it's not super small, but so this person shares, recently I was perusing ahead in my daily meditation book when I came upon a quote by Martha Roth that piqued my curiosity. Insight is cheap, she said. My first reaction was, gee, I don't agree with her. We in recovery place high value on insight. After all, it's our insight regarding the problem of addiction that makes us particularly helpful to the person who still suffers. But as I read the short essay following the quote, I began to see Ms. Roth's point. The essay talked about people who analyze themselves to death. They know exactly what makes them do the things they do. The tyrannical mothers, the abusive husbands, the poverty they were raised in, or the childhood of extreme indulgence and privilege. They have great insight, but instead of using that insight as a means to develop new and hopefully better behavior, they use it as a reason to continue with old, destructive behavior. They are not willing to go through the pain it takes to change, even though the pain of staying the same is killing them. They are victims. The list of people who have done them wrong is long, and the list of those people whose expectations they cannot live up to is even longer. They cling to their character defects with alarming tenacity, all the while blaming everything and everyone for their problems and never looking for solutions. In fact, they don't see their poor behavior as character defects at all, but more like genetic anomalies, such as bow legs and thin hair, or the permanent result of improper socialization by parents, who in most cases probably did the best job they could do, or best job they could. Admitting that they might be somewhat at fault, they are sure others are more to blame. Therefore, instead of asking God to remove any defects of character, they secretly curse God for dealing them such a lousy hand. And I just think it's such an interesting meditation, that like, because I've done this at points in my life where I was really unwilling to look at what my part was in any situation. And if you're really honest with yourself, what you realize over time is, I really can't do anything or control anything other than my own part. And sometimes my part in a situation is only my reaction or my response to something that has happened in my life. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't mean that what happened was okay, right? It doesn't mean that you weren't dealt a bad hand in life. But instead of actually taking a look at what we're doing with that, okay, and victimizing ourselves, continuing to use it as an excuse, you know, it's like whenever people like continue just to complain and complain and complain to me in life, you know, I often say, or I think to myself, you know, but there are always so many more people that have had it 100,000 times worse than you have ever had. And that has been a reminder to myself too when I get into that period of self-pity, which we all get into, okay? Like, we're none of us perfect examples of ourselves. I think we all go to a point of self-pity at times, right? And I do think that there are times when we have a right to be in pain, and there is a time that we have a right to feel like, I can't believe this was done to me, okay? But if you're 20 years out, which is what this book is talking about, and you're still talking about, you know, that why the world has wronged you in a certain way, you are a victim. And being that, okay, is like nobody is attacking you. You have the right to continue to be a victim for the next 40 years if you feel like it's benefiting you. But it's not benefiting you, right? And that's where it says in here, in fact, they don't see their part in holding on to that as being poor behavior. They are victims. The list of people who have done them wrong is long. Not to say that the people that did them wrong didn't do them wrong. Has every person that on that list did them wrong. And the list of those people whose expectations they cannot live up to is even longer. Maybe everybody in your life has really strong, high expectations for you, right? They cling to their character defects with alarming tenacity, all the while blaming everything and everyone for their problems and never looking for solutions. The solution is not in blaming other people. The solution is not in all the people that have done you wrong, who maybe they have. The solution is not in the list of people who have high expectations for you, which there might be many, okay? And maybe you can never live up to that. The solution is realizing that you and only you are the one that can change that. Things only began to change for me in my life when I stopped pointing the finger at other people and stopped trying to tell on other people. And I started to tell my truth and work on myself and realize that there are things that I have power in, and there are things that I have more control over than I want to admit, that I can let go of today, let go and let God and surrender to God. You know, it's like my sponsor said to me not too long ago, there's been some things that I've been holding on to in my life, you know, and I said, you know, like, I don't understand why God, you know, like this and that and whatever hasn't taken this. And she said to me, because I'm a person, you know, of spiritual belief, and she said, you can't pick your agnosticism. And I looked at her and I said, what? And she said, you can't pick your agnosticism. God is either in everything or nothing. And I have such a hard time with that sometimes, I think, as most of us do, because there are things out there that happen in the world that are unfair, that are unjust, okay, that are just not right. And I don't know where God is in that. And maybe I never will. And maybe God isn't in that. I don't know, right? But in my letting go of things and in my surrendering things to a higher power that I trust, I can't say, well, God took this away from me and God removed this from me, but won't do that. Then I have to take a look at that, right? And I have to believe and trust and, you know, that things are going to work out the way that they're supposed to. But me playing a victim, and I did that for a very, very long time. You know, I just say, God, the world is so out to get me. Nothing works in my favor. Nothing works out the right way for me, you know, whatever. You know, like, this is a small example. But today, I filmed not one, not two, but 3 review videos. Because the first the first one that I tried to review, they didn't have the item, they didn't have the lime stuff that I wanted. And on the second one, and you, back 5-10 years ago, I'd have been like, screw it, I'm not doing a review video today. The second one that I went to go review, they didn't have raspberry, pump of raspberry sauce or whatever. They didn't have a kiwi base. They didn't have something else. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is the second. And I had already filmed like 8 minutes of the review of each review at that point. So then I was driving home and I drove by Arby's, and there was like this orange cream shake that somebody had asked me to review. And I was thinking, I feel like I have reviewed this before, but fine, I'll review it, you know? And so I went through there, and then when I looked, sure enough, I had reviewed this orange dreamsicle shake, which I think is the exact same thing. At that point, I was just like, Peter, just put it up and have fun with it. You know, it's like, let it go. You know, and I know that that's not as serious as other things in people's lives. But what are you holding on to that continues to bring you pain because you're not letting you let go of it, you know? I always hesitate to say this because I think that unless you have been in counseling or therapy and really work through some issues, unless you work a 12-step program and do inventory and whatever, that this is not a fair statement, okay? Because I think that everybody has a right to work on their issues. But sometimes my part in something is that I am not letting it go. Sometimes my part is that I am still choosing to hold on to whatever resentment or anger that I have in my heart for whoever did me wrong or whatever happened in my life. Sometimes that is my part. Sometimes I have no part in what happened to me. Sometimes there are things that have happened that I have no part in that whatsoever. But 20, 30, 40 years later, maybe my part is that I'm still holding on to that and I'm not allowing myself to be free. You know, the goal of all of this is for us to find freedom from the pain that has held us hostage for those so many years. You know, that's why in Oprah's definition of forgiveness, she says that forgiveness is not letting go of the past, right? But accepting that what happened to us happened. Not that it was okay. Not saying, hey, what happened was okay, but accepting it happened. Now, what am I going to do about it so that I'm not held hostage to the things of my past, you know? And that's exactly what this book is talking about. I don't want to be a victim for the rest of my life. I don't want to sit here and say, well, I don't have this because of this, and I don't have that because of this. And all of it might be true. All of it might be true, right? But I don't want that to be the condition of my life. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. And if that means that I need to let go of some things and surrender and move on and move through, then that's what I have to do. And sometimes that's really, really painful, you know? Because sometimes I just want somebody to say to me, you're right, you were wronged. This person screwed you over. This person hurt you. This person did this. I want somebody to say that, you know? It was like when I was in counseling and I was talking to my counselor when we were in marriage counseling recently, you know, in the last couple of years, and I would meet every other week with him individually. And when we started talking about the bullying, he said to me, I really feel like you may have suffered some PTSD as a result of your bullying. He said, because you never knew where the next thing was going to come from, the next attack. And it was literally like, I mean, we're talking 35 years, okay? It was literally like, it just like lifted off my shoulders because one person acknowledged how serious what I went through had gone through. I mean, tons of people when I do videos about bullying say, I'm so sorry that you went through that, blah, 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 whatever. I'm sure it was horrible. There are so many people that say, I relate to your story. I went through the exact same things. And all of that, you know, is nice. And it feels like I'm heard. But that moment of having somebody say to me, it's so serious. What happened to you was so serious. And I think you may have suffered some PTSD to me was like this aha moment for me that was like, thank you that somebody validates this for me. There's not going to always be somebody there to validate everything that we've been through in our lives and all the people that have hurt us, you know? Sometimes we have to validate ourselves to say, what happened to me was not okay. What happened to me was painful, but I don't want to live in it for the rest of my life. And I want to move through it and surrender it and let go. So let me know what you, and let God for me, you know? But let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. I want to do something a little, what? I want to do something a little bit different today. So I love you guys and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.